I was pissed at the government. I'm like, why does the government need so much of my money? And I started, reviewing budgets, line item, any way I could get my hands on them, to figure out why there was so much spending and why my taxes were so high. And I realized that the government was just so wasteful.
All right, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Fire it up, Holmes!
I will tell you, this is going to be something special.
Just sit back and enjoy the show.
You're all dialed in with the books behind you. I'm waiting on my copy of Provoked. I ordered it and it's kind of back ordered, so I'm waiting for a new copy myself. And now I've been waiting to talk to you for a while. I'm really excited to kind of dig into some stuff with you. I refer to you as the meme queen myself. I used to have a bunch of social media stuff and I kind of swore it off for a long time. I got rid of all my Facebook, all that stuff. And then when Elon bought Twitter, I kind of started paying attention a little bit. And then I joined like last fall. I kind of re-signed up again. And you're one of the first people that I started following. And I tell you, it's been informative, it's been entertaining, and it's pretty hilarious because almost every morning, every evening, you have a new, fresh meme to say good morning or good evening. And it's always something witty. And I'm like, every time, like, damn, she got me again. That's another good one. So yeah. I'm honored to finally get to talk to you. And I got to ask you first off, how do you find all those? Are you just collecting them over? Are you making most of them?
No, I make some. I've actually just started making some. It's funny that you said meme queen because I've been called that in a. There's a group of us that make memes and we're kind of in cahoots in the background trying to figure this thing out that's called X. But no, I really wasn't too active on X until I probably had less than 1,000 followers until the Libertarian National Convention last May. And then after that, I started gaining some mutuals that I had met at the convention. I gave the nomination speech for one of the presidential candidates. And then after that, I had a couple viral posts. And all of a sudden, I woke up one day and I had within 4 days, had 17,000 more followers. And so, damn. Yeah. And I want to use the platform to inform people of how shitty our government is. And so, yeah, the memes I've just collected over the years. And there's a lot of great talent out there that puts, those messages in those pithy little comments.
It's really impressive, number one, that you have almost different one for every morning and every evening, but also that, I mean, memes in general, we don't have to explain what they are, but it's just the fact that you can convey so much information with a picture in one half of a sentence is pretty awesome. I repost a lot of them. I've made a couple, and the ones I make don't go nearly as far as the ones I've reposted, but it is fun to do. I definitely, every time I'm like, man, she got another banger every time.
Yeah, sometimes I'll make one and I'm like, oh, this is going to go viral. And then I get 2 likes and I'm like,
nothing. You're like, wait a minute, what happened? So I got to ask first off, are you even paying attention to the Dow Jones and the tariff stuff? Or other than the conversation, do you have any personal, are you invested in the stock market?
Yeah. I mean, I have a 401k. I'm in the S&P. I have some, money markets in my 401k. It's concerning. The last recession in 2008, not just because of the stock market, but my whole industry. I'm in the real estate settlement industry. And so
what's real estate settlement?
So when you buy a house, you have to go to a closing and, the lender and the buyer sends their funds into our company, our title company, and then it all gets dispersed out. The seller gets paid, the mortgage gets paid off,
got it.
All that stuff. I'm in accounting in that world. But,
fun.
Yeah.
So you probably got a pretty good pulse on what the housing market's doing most all the time.
Yeah. In 2008, when we had the last crash and the recession, when everything was getting foreclosed on because of the subprime lending. Um, it really hurt us. I mean, I was unemployed for 6 months, and then we bounced back because of the foreclosure market. We dialed into that market, and our clients were the big banks. But you know, I just feel like we're going to repeat that at some point, not just with the stock market, but real estate prices are highly inflated, and you know, it can't go on forever. So, I want to retire. I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 next year, and I'd like to retire early. I was hoping maybe at 60. We just have to watch and see what the stock market does. I'm not going to rely on Social Security.
Yeah, what Social Security?
Yeah, so just have to watch it. I'm concerned.
So
I think tariffs are good if they replace income tax. They're not good, but if we have to have one or the other, I'm fine with it if it's replacing a tax. But it always seems like there's good intentions, but then we just get added on to, and it's just going to be on top of taxes. So the American people.
I don't disagree with. I'm economically very much a layperson. I mean, I've owned and built and sold businesses, and I've done okay that way. But it's when it comes to like the details, I'm reading a bunch of economic stuff from Sol, and I'm trying to kind of catch up, I guess, in a way of stuff I feel like I should have known, or that should at least have a better understanding than just cursory. But following this stuff, it's like I'm really torn because I look at what Rand Paul's talking about, and I agree tariffs are just another tax. But then there's a part of me, and again, I have zero problem being wrong here, but there's a part of me that thinks that, okay, so if we have these tariffs that make everything more expensive, but it's a shorter term thing and it makes American companies bring manufacturing back, and all of a sudden our manufacturing can get back to what it was in the 50s and 60s, if that's even possible, then maybe it's kind of a means to an end, so that, because obviously people are buying stuff here, hopefully eventually the tariffs would kind of dwindle down. And if manufacturing goes back and we're able to have better wages and a lot more people employed and making products here in this country, maybe it's kind of that means to an end for that. And maybe it's wishful thinking for me. Maybe I'm not smart enough to understand it, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it in the meantime. But I don't have anything in the stock market, so I'm just kind of watching as it's going up and down right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a free trade girl. I think if the government just stays out of it, and just lets the corporation. Right now, we don't have actual capitalism because we have crony capitalism. The government is involved in every aspect of bailing out corporations that are too big to fail. And if they would just stay out of it, then the free market would do its thing. I'm not an economist, but that's just my take on it.
I completely agree. And I think the tricky thing too is, like, I would love to have tariffs replace the income tax. Actually, before we get rid of income tax, I'd rather get rid of property tax myself. But if the tariffs could replace income tax, I would be willing to swap that. And it seems like, to go back to that magical year everybody talks about, 1912, it seems like that's what we were doing. But again, layperson here, I keep thinking, well, we didn't have the debt that we have now back in 1912. So, I mean, if we did get rid of income tax in the way for tariffs, I don't know if we could make enough just to pay off the debt that we have. That's my bigger hang-up.
I feel like we're bankrupt already. I agree. I don't think we're ever going to pay off that debt. Not in our grandchildren's lifetime, not in our grandchildren's lifetime. It's all monopoly money now. I mean, Congress is spending like they can just print and spend, and nobody suffers except for the American people.
It's crazy. And I don't know how much more suffering people can take. I mean, I know that obviously in this country, we're still richer than almost probably every other country, but I just don't know how much more people could take before it gets really ugly. I mean, I don't know about bread lines and things like that. Again, I don't know if that's a possibility, but just to see people get this upset about it when, like you said, I mean, it's like they just keep printing, or they keep doing their quantitative easing or whatever they call it, to try and kind of move the money around. But it seems like it's, first it was the .com bubble, then it was the housing bubble. And it's like, what's going to be the next? It's like the fraud and the shady deals seem to just move from industry to industry. And I'm wondering, what the next one is to pop. I don't know enough again about this. And I'm hoping that with enough of the investments that Trump seems to be getting for the country, that maybe this is, I'm very much in a wait and see mode. Like, I don't know enough to have an educated opinion, but he's either going to completely blow this shit up or it's going to turn it around. And again, we probably won't pay the debt off, but maybe we can refinance some. Maybe we can, at least have people making more money and having more stability. But I really don't know what to expect.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like wages are stagnant and costs just keep going up. I feel like there's a little bit of easing, with Trump being in office, but yeah, it is definitely a wait and see.
It's a lot of it feels like, I voted for Trump because there was just no way I could vote for what the Democrats were doing. I'm not a Republican in the sense, traditionally. I definitely identify more with libertarian. I see your T-shirt. I have to ask you about that. What's the history of your political story? Have you always been free market libertarian? Did you start off Democrat, Republican? Kind of give me your background that way.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very conservative Christian household. My parents were Republicans, and I just assumed I was just a Republican. I was born into it. And I was in my early to mid 20s in the George Bush days,
Okay.
George W. And 9/11 happened. And then shock and awe in 2003, he starts bombing Saddam and Iraq, and all these innocent people are being killed, and our military members are being killed for what seemed like, an oil capture.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, here we were, I thought we were going to go, get the guys that flew planes into the towers, and Saddam had nothing to do with that. And all of a sudden we're bombing Iraq, which was kind of a continuation of his father's war. And
yeah, and they let Osama go when they had him the first time too. It sounds like I just finished the Dave Smith pod with Rogan the other day, and I mean I've heard him say it before, but it's like, yeah, it just reminds you like that's not really what we were doing.
Yeah, and so that was happening, and I was also a business owner, and I had 2 little kids at home, and I was having to pay payroll tax and property tax and sales tax, and there was hardly anything left. Worked my ass off. And there's hardly anything left for me and my kids. And I was pissed at the government. I'm like, why does the government need so much of my money? And I started, reviewing budgets, line item, any way I could get my hands on them, to figure out why there was so much spending and why my taxes were so high. And I realized that the government was just so wasteful. And so that was really what kind of radicalized me at first. I didn't really move away from the Republican Party at that point. And then I learned about Dr. Ron Paul when he was running for president in 2008. And my world was just like, I was blown away. I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So, of course, the world wasn't ready for him. The Republican Party choosing John McCain and then Mitt Romney over Ron Paul just really left me kind of politically homeless. I thought, what the hell are these people doing? And then I found the Libertarian Party in 2013. So I started getting active. I was the secretary of my local affiliate. I stepped away for a couple of years. I'm very pro-life, and the abortion plank in the libertarian platform was something that I had a hang up about. And then in 2000,
I can see why.
Yeah, 2022 was it? With the Reno reset, they removed the abortion plank. And so I came back to the party. I became a lifetime member as kind of a thank you to the party for removing the abortion plank from the platform. and started getting involved again. I am the chair of the 5th Congressional District for the Libertarian Party of Virginia and the treasurer for my local Libertarian Party of Central Virginia. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Have you always been on the East Coast?
I'm sorry?
Have you always been on the East Coast?
No, in my adult life, I've actually lived in 8 different states. I traveled around a lot, and kind of a gypsy at heart. I don't like to plant roots for too long, except I've been back in Virginia since 2009. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I've been back here for a while. But yeah, I did vote for Trump. At the convention, we did not end up with the candidate that a lot of us were hoping for. I went back and forth between, was I going to write in Ron Paul or, Virginia was kind of close. We were at a point where we could have flipped back away from the Democrats with the Electoral College. So I decided I would just go ahead and vote for Trump, just to try to ensure that Kamala didn't get any, extra leeway in Virginia.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, so my story is similar in ways. So I grew up in a very Republican, conservative Christian household. When I got to be an adult, it wasn't for me. And I grew up in Southern California. So I very much had, and maybe still have a little bit of that Southern California kind of attitude where I was very Democrat when I was younger because, number one, it was a good way to rebel against Republican parents. Mm-hmm. But as far as I hate to say the Clinton Democrat years, like when I was, I'm 45. So when I was in high school and we had to take government class, we went to Bill Clinton, one of his 96 rallies. And I got to meet him. It was really awesome and that type of Democrat, at least to when I'm a young adult, made a lot of sense. I mean, the guy's personal life, that's a whole other story. Maybe some of the missing bodies and things we could have to talk about. But as far as the platform, I really agreed with that type of progressive, direction, I guess. I didn't really have an opinion on abortion. I've always looked at it, or I did look at it as strict kind of a religious, or for lack of a better term, a Christian or Catholic kind of principle. And I never paid a lot of attention to it. And it wasn't that I was against it or that I was for it. It just wasn't an issue for me. Growing up, I was in a lot of bands and touring and playing music and recording music. And I just thought that I was surrounded by a lot of people that were progressive, Democrats. And it really fell apart when Ron Paul, again, that was a big thing for me. When I saw him, I kind of started paying attention to him. And unfortunately, it's probably naivete on my part, but I kind of lumped him in with that third parties never taken seriously, the way they did him dirty. I just kind of went, well, it's either going to be Republicans or Democrats my whole life. And that's kind of how it's been until we got to COVID. and I will say, admittedly, I've talked about this before. For me, Trump was always that guy on The Apprentice. He was the guy that had the airlines and the steak company. And he was the character from Home Alone 2. Like I never took him seriously as a politician. I never really paid attention to what he said other than his kind of public persona. And, admittedly, I fell for a lot of the Russia stuff in 2016. Like I just kind of went with, oh, well, all the news channels aren't going to be lying. Maybe there's one or two that would, Fox is far right and this is far left, but they're not all going to lie. And boy, was I wrong there. But I found out the hard way when we got to COVID, and I watched really the last 4 or 5 years, just watched the inflation go ridiculously through the roof, watching them make up money, taking away where it hit me was all the personal liberties and freedoms being taken away during COVID. That was like, that drove me to the Libertarian Party. And I got to the point where I was like, I don't care if this third party thing's ever taken seriously or not. I have to vote my principles. I just have to vote principles. And then all the lawfare against Trump and the 34, past the statute of limitations, misdemeanors, they made felonies, and the E. Jean Carroll and all these, I started paying attention. Wait a minute. Maybe this all is a bunch of bullshit against this guy. And look, the guy's obviously not perfect. He's got his we've all heard the Billy Bush tape and all the things, but it's like I started paying attention to his actions a lot less than his words. And that really kind of did it for me. And then watching the whole coup against Biden and how he turned into a Roomba after every speech and he was losing his mind and how they installed Kamala. And just, I started really paying attention to that. And there was just no way that I could vote Democrat again, based on the fact that they weren't. And I was a Bernie guy too, a lot like Joe Rogan was back in the day, not to name drop, but I felt like they did Bernie wrong really bad. And then I felt like he didn't stand up for himself. And I just thought, okay, if you're going to roll over, then I'm kind of done with this outside thinking stuff until we got to Libertarian Party. I've really been following Dave Smith quite a bit. And then I found Thomas Massie when he went and spoke to the empty chamber. And when that happened, that really opened my eyes to like, okay, this is more about principle. And it's probably a certain age thing too, because I'm, my 40s now, but I got to the point where I was like, this is a matter of principle. And this is a matter of what I actually want to be able to tell my kids, how I didn't waver from what I thought just to kind of go with a winning team, etc. So that's how I ended up with the Libertarian Party. I'm not a lifetime member, but I'm so far an annual member, and I've been following closely, and I'm on the mailing list, and boy, do they send a lot of emails.
Yes, they do.
But I've been following closely, and I really, not to canonize Thomas Massie, but I really appreciate the fact that man is just all principle all day long, and it doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter which way the wind's blowing. And I posted something this the other day. I think we talked a little bit about it, but I would love to see Massie run for president and win with someone like a Dave Smith, but I just feel like that's such a pipe dream that I don't know. Do you think the populace is ready for somebody like that, like a Massie?
No.
Okay.
The Republican Party is not ready for Thomas Massie, just like they were not ready for Ron Paul. And what's sad is so many, I call them low info voters, but it's mainly the boomer population who just listens to mainstream media, Trump's tweets, and influencers like Cat Turd and all these ridiculous people that just throw out whatever Trump wants. We have to have a brain and actually realize that there are people out there who are America first. So if with what Trump campaigned on, if the American people would just give Thomas Massie a chance to do what he wants to do in Congress, they would get what Trump campaigned on. I always say, a lot of Republicans campaign like libertarians and then run their offices like Democrats.
That's a perfect way to put it. Yeah.
And that seems to be what Donald Trump is doing this time, unfortunately, on some things. I hear a lot, Thomas Massie, he doesn't do anything. What has he ever done? He has brought forth so many bills every year that he's in Congress. And the problem is getting them to the floor and getting them voted on. The things that he brings forth are things that the American people actually want. The Constitutional Carry Act. That's something.
I'm following that. I get all the updates for that one. I'm following closely.
We shouldn't need that. Literally, we have the Second Amendment that should protect us from the government infringing on our rights to protect ourselves. There should be no laws as far as guns are concerned. But he's introduced this legislation to protect us from the states who are, overreaching beyond the Second Amendment. So there's that. He introduced, no tax on tips and no tax on Social Security before it was even brought up on the campaign trail with Donald Trump. There's just so many things that if we could get his bills passed, people wouldn't be saying, what does Thomas Massie do? Does he do anything? Yeah. We would actually have a better country. I encourage everyone to follow him and listen to the videos he puts out and actually read his tweets or his posts on X, because he explains everything he does and why he does it. And it makes sense.
It's almost like it's like hiding in plain sight. I just like there's so many people that talk about this or that, and then to your point, and who'd have ever thought there'd be an influencer named Cat Turd first off, but when those guys or I won't even name the others, it's like whatever Trump says, they start posting these things about this, and then the wind changes and they post the opposite things and go try and delete the last things they said. That guy Massey has always been principled and has always put up the things that, I mean, he's like super glued to the Constitution. Like everything he does is constitutionally based. And I think Justin Amash was really good when he was in as well. But to see Rand Paul and Massey in there, like, it seems like they're the only two that are, and I don't even agree with Rand all the time, but to see the things that these guys are doing, it's like people need to pay more attention. And to your point, so I'm in Washington, unfortunately, Washington State. And there's guns I can't even buy here, which is absolutely ridiculous because they've made some goofy rule that obviously is directly in conflict with the Second Amendment, but it doesn't seem to matter. And there hasn't been enough pushback, or there hasn't been whatever. I'm really hoping that we get to the point where I'm following his constitutional carry bill, and then I'm following the other bill for 50 state reciprocity because I have my concealed at least. So if we get to that point, it's at least a step in the right direction. But I completely agree. And his Department of Education abolition bill, ATM. I mean, the guy is always spot on with these things. And not that I'm not trying to fanboy on him, but he's also an MIT grad. He holds patents for inventions. I mean,
he's a genius.
Everyone in his district loves him. My wife and I talked about getting out of Washington, and I have some custody. I have 50-50 custody of a daughter that's here with an ex-wife, and so I can't at this point bear to leave. She's only 9 years old, but I slug it out and deal with all the BS in Washington because of my daughter being here. But I keep telling my wife, it's like, when we can go, I really want to look at Kentucky and I want to go to this specific district. And she doesn't like the humidity, so I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm hoping we can. The next best thing is to get a bunch of Thomas Massey kind of clones in Congress and the Senate to start putting forth some real, constitutionally based. All of his bills are like one sentence, and it's all you need to have. And
absolutely.
Anyway, I love it. So my next question for you is, are you going to be running for office, do you think? Are you at that point in your life where you think that's the next step for you?
I've actually considered this over the years many times. It's never been the right time for me. Now my kids are grown. I do care for, my mother has Alzheimer's and I'm her full-time caregiver.
Okay.
She's been with me for 8 years. She's actually about to go move in with my sister to give me a little break after many years of caring for her. So I'm at a point where if I decide to do it, it's getting close to being the right time. I also have a full-time job, so it's kind of hard to balance all that with campaigning. But I might start locally. All of our local offices are nonpartisan. The only problem is, even though they're nonpartisan, the local Republican and Democrat parties will endorse people. So it's basically known, who's on which team. And libertarians, we've had a couple libertarians in our county and on our board of supervisors. But the problem is Republicans say that they're for less spending, and then they get even locally, they get in office and then they raise personal property taxes. They want to, I don't know. They want to fund things like, baseball fields and, things that people should not have to pay for unless they're using. And so it's a fight anywhere I go. I feel like if I did run for office, I would probably run, if it wasn't a local office that's nonpartisan, I would probably go ahead and join the Republican Party. And if I ran for a state or national office, I'm probably looking at a 10-year plan if I go beyond a local office.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Well, I would be honored if you did to follow your path if you did and to watch. I mean, I really think that we need more people to have a voice. Like I was watching your clip that you have posted of you at the convention, and I think you have a good knack for speaking. I think you have a good knack for people paying attention to what you say. I was curious if you'd run as a libertarian or Republican, so you answered that. I'd love to see you get to a national level, just because I think that, I mean, there's so much mudslinging and shit that you take to do that. So
Yeah,
I can understand why anybody wouldn't.
there's this whole thing about, having a past and, your opponents just drudging up everything. Of course, I'm kind of an open book, so I would probably counter that by just, putting everything out in the open myself before anybody tried to sling mud. I don't know. It's probably something that I would love to do it. I think we need more people like Thomas Massey in office, in national office. And if more of us can actually run for office and get in there, grow the Freedom Caucus, or even have a Libertarian caucus, I think
that'd be awesome to see.
Yeah, I feel like I love the libertarian philosophy, but I'm tired of losing, like we're losers. Yeah. We just don't win very much. And, definitely not nationally. And so I feel like more of us are conservative leaning, and definitely on, spending and anti-war. I think it would be great if we could somehow infiltrate the Republican Party and, and more of us vote for less spending, the things that Republicans actually campaign on: less spending, lower taxes, reducing the deficit, balancing the budget.
No, I totally agree. It's interesting because the Libertarian Party obviously is such a small, I mean, it's basically a two-party system still.
Right.
But to look at the Libertarian Party, there's quite a big umbrella of people who call themselves libertarians, and it ends up in this big circular firing squad, or these litmus tests about, are you libertarian enough? Are you more of an ANCAP? And it's like, all right, there's so many labels. It's like, let's just get back to, it's so weird about the list of things I've seen. Is like, if we just stuck to the Constitution, we wouldn't have all of these things. And it's like, when did we get so far off of just going by the rules we already had in place? So I've considered running myself. If I don't end up in Kentucky, which I probably won't, my wife's from Southern Oregon, which is, again, kind of out of the frying pan into the fire, but not Portland, the other side of the state. And it's much more conservative there. And I thought that if I end up there, I could maybe run for a state office. But to your point, it's like they do so many things. The Democrats run the West Coast so, like, they have such a tight grip on it that it would just be like losing all the time. And maybe I'd win in a district, but then when I get to a state, I'm always going to be outvoted. I'm never going to get to. It's like, do I do it because I feel like it's a principle to do, or do I do it because I really think I can win? And I'm a ways off from that. So I'm probably on a 10-year plan myself, but I genuinely hope that you do it. I would love to see you and more people like you getting in there and just digging. Maybe, like you said, maybe join the Republican Party when it comes to a national thing, just to, I guess, for more people to take you more seriously, I guess. I've always thought with Trump too, it's like, when I watched Trump, like Trump 1.0 to me was like he had everything to prove. Mm-hmm. And now Trump 2.0 is like he's got nothing to lose.
Right.
And it's interesting to watch. I mean, I saw something this morning about, and take it with a grain of salt, but some inner circle person was quoted as basically saying like he doesn't care anymore. He's past the caring part. And it's like that's good in some ways, but that's really bad when it comes to Yemen, and things like that. It's like, what are we doing with a guy who, to your point earlier, you campaign on no more wars, no more funding, all these things, and now you're bombing people, and it seems like maybe it's on the behalf of somebody else. Yeah. It's really disheartening, and it's like, did we get tricked? But then I go, well, I still couldn't have voted for Kamala, and I couldn't have voted for boys playing girls sports, and I couldn't have voted for that. So it's like, I don't know. I'm stuck.
Yeah, I mean, he's done some good things, and unfortunately, a lot of his executive orders are being blocked right now. But and they'll go through litigation. But he did campaign on. I mean, I remember his interview with Tim Pool where he said, you know, what is Biden doing? You know, bombing the Houthis. This can be solved with one phone call.
Yep.
You know, and um, I'll end the war in Ukraine before I'm inaugurated. Uh, there were so many encouraging things that he campaigned on. Um, I have been anti-war, like I said, since the George Bush days, and peace is always the answer. We don't have to go and, I mean, if he needed to take out this Houthi, you know, leader a couple weeks ago, you know, we read the signal chat and they're like, oh, he's walking into his girlfriend's apartment. Let's get him.
Yeah.
And they bomb the entire apartment building and take out all these innocent people because one guy
I don't
needed
see
to be
any
taken out.
there's no justification for that.
There's none. And we have killed millions, not just Muslims, Christians. We are killing Christians in Gaza. We are, you know, it's innocent people are dying when, like Trump said, this can be ended with a phone call. It really can. I mean, I'm not there,
It
you
should
know,
have.
I'm not in the situation room, so I don't know everything that's going on. But, you know, he didn't start any new wars in his first term. And, you know, all we're hearing now is, oh, Iran is on the brink of having nuclear capability. Well, we've been hearing that for 30 years. And
Yeah,
that's
my
the
whole life.
excuse. And I swear, if we start a war with Iran, that's it. It's over, you know?
Yeah, then it's like, well, where do you go politically? Because that politically homeless very much is how I labeled myself for up until the last couple of years. I mean, I felt the same exact way. It's like, you know, you see people like Tulsi. Like I was a really big fan of Tulsi and following her and her service. And when she was running and she completely obliterated Kamala in the primaries, I was all for kind of her brand, if you will. And to watch, I'm sure there's a level, again, layperson. So I'm sure there's a level when you get to that office, you get to see behind a curtain and you go, oh shit, there's way more here than what anybody could have ever imagined. So giving somebody a little bit of grace that way, but still just to watch the way it was so nonchalant about blowing up an apartment building and like, hey, great job, guys. And just to see it's like more of the same again. And it's really disheartening. And it's hard to want to defend. Well, first of all, you should never defend any candidate, no matter what. That's crazy. But that, unfortunately, is where we seem to be, where it's like, are you this team or that team? And if you're this team, you have to go with everything this guy says, or you're not on that team. And anyway, but to really see kind of how the same patterns are being repeated, it really makes you wonder, like, is it really just a one-party state that is masquerading as a two-party state? And unfortunately, the older and more cynical I get, that's what it seems to be.
Yeah, absolutely. The uniparty, I feel like, is a very real thing. It was disheartening to see that signal chat where, you know, Tulsi was praising the action where, I mean, she's been anti-war, and I've really appreciated her stance on pushing for peace. And but you know, you see it in Congress too with Mike Johnson. Everybody was encouraged about, you know, Mike Johnson being Speaker of the House. I wasn't personally, but
No.
but some people were, and you know, he was going to fight against the Democrats and you know, make a change in Congress in the House, and then you see him come out of this meeting in the skiff with, you know, the CIA, and I have this video clip that I've posted several times on X where, you know,
Oh yeah, I saw it.
he specifically says to the press, you know, well, I met with the CIA and now things have changed. You know, he just completely flipped, and now he's, you know, doing all the things that the Democrat House did when they were the majority. So, you know, I think it's definitely uniparty. They're captured not only by the deep state, but there are certain certain lobbyists that give money to both sides of the aisle, and they do their bidding for them. It just seems like, most of the elected officials don't have the American people's best interest at heart. It's all about who's making the money.
I agree, and except for people like Massey, and then
Yeah.
the machine completely gets weaponized against him to where people don't take him seriously, and they write him off as a joke, and then we go back to kind of business as usual. And okay, so for me, it's kind of like that picture when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and the plane's taking off, and there's people hanging off the airplane. I mean, it's a horrific, tragic photo. I feel like where we need to be now as a country is we need to be that airplane. And we need to be all the hangers on, all the people that are. I joke about this, but it's like they keep threatening to shut the government down. Like, don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, do it.
Let's shut everything down, and then just as the voices get louder of where the money's needed, we'll reopen things as needed and fund those things that are needed. And I feel like that. I feel like it's the old saying of like the only way out is through, and it's a weird thing because Trump's been in not even 100 days, so there's this. Is everybody ganging up on him too soon? Is the 4 and 5D chess thing gets thrown around a lot? And I think that I'm sure he's had plenty of time to plot. I'm sure he's had plenty of people on his team to help plot, but I do think he's kind of the same old Trump in a lot of ways where it's not all planned out. It's more reactionary. But it's like, where do we go? Do we go back to, we go back to the Democrats? That's obviously not going to work, where we fund the world and everything's a psyop and everything's, funded to make us go whichever way they want us to go. Or do we defend this guy who had some of the right things to say and got elected on these things? And do we wait and see what 2 years looks like from now? And do these tariffs pay off? Are we in a place where we're financially better? Or is it going to be just more shooting ourselves in the foot? And I honestly I don't know. I don't know where we go from here. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I've never been, a candidate purist. If they do something stupid, I'm going to call them out on it. Unfortunately, I've been calling out a lot of stupid things lately. And, like people are like, oh, well, would you have rather had Kamala? No, I voted for Trump because of what he campaigned on. He's done some great things and I've praised them. But when he does stupid shit, I'm going to call him out on it.
It's not an either or. For people that are so pro non-binary, they don't understand that it's not binary. Yeah. It's not an either or.
I'm not completely black-pilled yet. I'm still giving him a chance, but it's just really frustrating. And people keep reminding me, well, he's not a libertarian, so you're not going to, be happy with everything. And I know that, but it's still frustrating because the things that he did campaign on that were libertarian leaning, he's not following through on. Not all of them anyway. But the issue is, so the Libertarian Party, I would say, based on like internal polling and polls that I've done, probably 80 to 85% of us actually voted for Trump instead of our own candidate. It was one of the worst turnouts for the Libertarian candidate that I can remember ever.
It was a pretty bad candidate.
It was bad. So the actions that Trump is taking that are not in line with how he campaigned, he's going to lose a lot of voters who may vote Republican in the midterms. Like, for example, in my state, it's an open primary state. I can vote in either a Democrat primary or a Republican primary. We don't register for a specific primary. I feel like the libertarian leaning voters may not even show up for the midterms.
I agree.
He's going to flip seats if he keeps it up.
Yeah.
And, he's not my savior in chief. I can't stand when people get so angry at the criticism, but you have to use critical thinking and understand that, he actually can do wrong. He's not sin free, so we'll see. I keep an open mind. I haven't shut him down, but it's definitely frustrating.
Well, I'm not completely black-pilled either, but I will say that I completely agree with you on number one on you have to be able to call out good and bad. I mean, that's honestly just part of being an adult, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basic adulting, as they say. You can't just co-sign to something just because this person wears the color jersey that you like or whatever. But a big thing for me, and this is, I'm gonna throw you a curveball here, but I'm really interested in a lot of the UAP UFO stuff, and watching what happened over Christmas with the drones and all the stuff, and a lot of the talk about how they were ours, but they ignored Biden. How we don't know what it is, but don't worry about it. It's all legal. And then Trump gets in. I'm going to figure out what it is. And then nothing, just nothing, absolutely nothing. I really wonder, to go out on the crazy limb here, I wonder how much some of that stuff is going on behind the scenes, where maybe we do have some technologies that most of our government doesn't know about. And that's why some of the deep state, for lack of a better term, is so kind of callous with their actions, because maybe that's a card they feel like they can pull when it comes to it. I've been following a lot of this topic, and my point here is that a lot of the experts that are talking about this stuff are saying that the next thing that is going to happen is like a staged alien invasion where it's fake, but it's our stuff, and talking about some of the Tic Tac and some of the stuff that they saw in the early 2000s, where those kind of things come out and start shooting down our military planes or our commercial airliners, and they stage it as an alien invasion, as another way to kind of, I know I sound nuts here, but to kind of get everybody on the same page of like, okay, take more of our liberties, Patriot Act 3.0. I worry about that, and it feels like that's kind of where it's heading, to be a little bit conspiracy theorist here. But in the meantime, I guess we just sit back and call the stuff out that we call out, and take the opportunities as they come, and hope that, I have a 5-week-old daughter, and I'm going to homeschool her, but I don't know what we're leaving to them. I just don't know. And before, I could have told you. I have 3 kids, all in a different generation. That's another story for another day. But I don't know what we're leaving to them. And those kind of things, like the deep state and the UAP and the technology stuff, really kind of makes me wonder what's going to be here when I'm not. So I don't mean to throw a downer at you, but that's the stuff that bothers me. It's not even so much of what we're dealing with, because, I mean, Gen X, it seems like we can kind of get through anything. But I wonder what some of these younger generations are going to be dealing with in 20, 30 years if we have a country.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we'll have a country. I'm not that person, but
I feel like the deep state is trying to, like you said, they'll generate psyops to kind of get us unified in our, agreeing to remove some of our liberties from us. They did it with COVID.
It's like the same
9/11,
playbook every time.
Anytime there's a war, it's like, but I feel like they're not going to get us on wars anymore. Like, there's too many people on both sides of the aisle that are anti-war. We've had enough. We don't want to be in that sandbox anymore. Just pull out, abort. We're done. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I have my son's a millennial, my daughter's Gen Z. I have a 3-year-old granddaughter. As a parent, my goal with my kids is, when I leave, or even before I'm gone, I want to see my kids better off than me. I think our parents wanted to see, us better off than them. Every generation feels that way about their kids. We want our kids to succeed. My kids can't even, my kids are 32 and 26, and neither one of them are thinking about buying a house. Well, one lives in Colorado, where, forget buying a house, because, the prices are just ridiculous.
It's like Washington.
Oh, it's crazy. It's so crazy. I actually considered moving out there, and between the tyrannical government out there now taking away all the gun rights and the trans stuff and the, everything else, plus the cost of living, it's not going to happen. But, having a millennial and a Gen Z child who are both older than when I bought my first house, and, they're not homeowners yet. They struggle, even though they have really good jobs. it's all because of the government. You hear boomers all the time, well, just get a second job or get a better job.
Yeah.
No, like the government puts so much regulation on industry and then taxes us to death. If they could just keep their whole paycheck, they'd be all right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you think there's any sort of do you think there's any sort of hope to getting off of the fiat money and going back to any sort of, gold standard or anything like that?
I mean, if we end the Fed,
Now
another
you're
one of
preaching.
Thomas Massey's bills, one sentence bill, and the Fed. And I don't see it happening. I mean, I feel like the central banks they are the deep state. Like we think it's the government. It's the central
money.
bank.
Yeah.
And
well, I'd like to see it happen. I don't know what it would take, and I don't wish anything dramatic. I mean, 9/11 was bad enough, and honestly, I think in the scale of tragedies, it was probably pretty small compared to what could happen. And I don't wish for any sort of major shakeup that in order to kind of be reborn or kind of start over, I guess, politically. But it seems like that's what it would take at this point, and it's kind of scary. But
yeah, I feel like Doge was going to do that. They talked about this golden age. We're going into this golden age, and it was going to tear the government down bit by bit, and then all of a sudden, the voting comes along on the continuing resolution on Biden's budget.
Funding it all over again.
And we're funding it all over again. So, I was really encouraged that, we were going to end the Department of Education and at least audit the Fed, audit Fort Knox, just tear down, get rid of the income tax, abolish the IRS. That would be such a huge start. I think that would definitely be some sort of reset for our country in a good way, in a positive way. And it just seems like it's just not happening.
It seems like, and again, layperson, but to look at all of these things that were promised, and I don't think it's for lack of trying. I mean, I think Doge and that whole, I don't think it was rhetoric. I really think they're trying to do it. But you look at my state specifically, the Attorney General for Washington is proud to file every lawsuit he can against Trump, and they just filed one with Oregon against the election ID stuff. It's like for citizenship. It's like I had no idea that a district judge had more authority than the president. I guess I'm learning this now in my 40s. It really makes me wonder what it's going to take before we can actually get something done, because it doesn't seem like no matter what they say they want to get done, they try and get it done, and they're blocked 6 ways from Sunday. And it just seems like no matter what, we're on this determinist path of we're the rats in the maze and they're putting the walls up where they want them to be. And I don't want to end on a downer. I really don't. I think there's a huge nationwide thing today of a bunch of rallies, anti-Trump, anti-Elon rallies, which I find hilarious. But we've got a sunny day in Washington, which is rare. So I'm going to end up jumping on the bike and going out and maybe revving my motor as loud as I can by some of those rallies or something. So.
Perfect.
Anyways, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I like to keep up and probably talk to you again in the future after some more stuff happens, granted, because we're only 80 days in.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to hold out hope that we're not having this conversation at 3 years in, that it's only a few months in, and maybe a couple of years down the road, we can come back and be like, oh my God, we were so wrong. And look at all the stuff we just need some momentum. We need a couple wins. And I think we need to get our sail up and get the wind going the right way. And I think we can get some more people on board.
I would love to be wrong about, what Trump's doing. Definitely would love to be wrong.
Well, thank you for your time. I sincerely appreciate it. Go enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Yeah, it was great talking.
We'll talk again.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.